Okay, so I'm just gonna hop right into it. So right now, one of the Trump is actually viewing a case right now from SCOTUS, going over birthright citizenship. Um, let's see. I don't know where they are in arguments currently because like they're literally going over it live. So let's see if I can. Oh, oopsie. That's why I'm lagging. Can't do that. Oopsie. Um. Oh, I guess it's already over for today. We're not going. Oh, if to.
Court, the government's brief argued that it was
Okay, awesome. I was watching a video game streamer. And why did okay. Felt like I'm might okay, we're going. Okay, I don't know what that was weird. I just saw. Um, but like no. I okay. Well, the current Trump signed an executive order on the first of last year. Well, no, the January 20th of last year. Um, but basically talking about that both parents have to be US citizens and that any child born is going to have prove the citizenship of their parents to prove that they are not an undocumented individual. Um, which one what we get the 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction of no state. Where was it? Oh, okay. Did I do the right thing? Okay. No. Equal tree. Um, sorry, the pay attention depressing. I'm trying to find a part. I know I remember reading it earlier where basically it's saying that anyone born on US soil is basically naturalized currently. And that's the way it's been viewed since the United States versus Wong Kim Ark 1898 by SCOTUS under the 14th Amendment. And basically which states that any person born in the US is a citizen regardless of their parents' nationality. Um, and basically, I also did not realize this as I was researching this. I didn't realize that only indigenous people, individual, uh, indigenous individuals. My brain did not like that letter. Did not like those words back to back. Um, were not granted citizenship until 1924. Um, um, also the court case happened, basically help protect the 14th Amendment more. But anyway, what I'm looking at right now is the docket number, which is number 253065. Uh, in
Impossible for
I wonder if there's this. I didn't realize how long. 5 hours. Huh. So actually, literally went over an hour ago. So I'm gonna see if anyone has a synopsis real quick because I do not birthright citizenship. And while I'm looking that up, uh, I I know that Trump campaigned this as one of his platform pieces. I understand that. Um, I just I'm trying to think of other word. I don't. I'm trying to, and this also questions like okay, pausing. I don't understand his motivations into why besides I do not understand Trump's motivations or the administration's moves to argue birthright citizenship besides like because of how much it's going to happen in response to it. Because like what about people who were born here like DACA? Um I don't know if they're counted as like kids anymore, but who were kids who like is that going to get retroactively removed because of all this? Um is and the impacts of like the DACA kids is this well not I can't presume DACA. But Migration Policy Institute estimated that 5.5 million children under the age of 18 um live with a parent with who are not into the who do not live who are not who here I'm getting tongue tied very much today. 5.5 million children under the age of 18 lived with at least one parent who is in this country illegally in 2019, which it represents 7% of the US population. And the kids didn't choose to do that, so what's gonna happen to the kids? And so, like, the fallout of that can have major ramifications. It can also have ramifications, like, 20 years down the line because it will limit the jobs that those children can have since they can on if they're no longer legal citizens, it means that they are condemned by their parents' choices and will limit the options they can have. It might even limit some of the education opportunities depending on what happens with the and it also impact the amount of people who could impact their voting and passports as well. Um, oh yeah, passports are expensive, like $165. And so it impact them, like, would their old passports count anymore or not? Or would they have to buy brand new ones? Or is the government help covering that cost? I'm I don't I'd be amazed if the government would be do I'd be amazed if the government was doing that type of would be cover the cost of that. But 4 different federal courts rejected Trump's executive order and did automatic citizenship for those people. And also comes into another question as well of basically what Trump is doing is questioning an amendment. Executive order only amendment can be another amendment. That is how it's been. That's why let me see if I can pull up the amendment periodic table. And we're gonna see if I can. Okay, cool. That's why we have what is the prohibition? Okay, So the 18th Amendment, the only way the 18th Amendment got appealed is because of the repeal of prohibition in 1933 with the 21st Amendment. So if Trump or his administration wants to repeal the 14th Amendment, you're going to have to get Congress to actually repeal it with another amendment. And to make amendment, both sides of Congress, two-thirds sides, which currently it also is getting more complicated because I want to say last week alone had um had two Republicans say that they are not going to be try and have another term. But so like the numbers are dwindling there, and they don't have two-thirds. They barely have a simple majority. And the same thing with the Senate, and also no one's had the Senate since like 2009, and then like 1979 before that. 2009 was 45 days for the Democrats, and so like I'd be very impressed if it could get past Congress alone. And then 38 states need to ratify it. I That's even more suspect because of I want to say the Equal Rights Amendment that's been proposed back then, in enshrining for equality based off of genders. And that wasn't even agreed on, and there's a debate because that's a sunset clause. And that's oh, quickly sunset clause basically says it has to be signed by this date or you have to restart again. So I don't so you can't do it by Congress. An executive order, it would be an overreach. Oh, okay. I was just confused by a second. That is a weird thumbnail. But whatever. I'm just looking at seeing if anyone has a synopsis because I got distracted on that monologue. Um, so oh, we're going like NPR seems to have a video. We'll watch that.
This is a huge deal. Americans have thought for probably 150, 160 years, it's been pretty well established. Children born on American soil are American citizens. And now President Trump is
Um,
challenging that.
We're the only country in the world that does this with birthright, as you know.
That actually is not true. There are
I'm sorry. I'm just amazed at how. Also, like, okay, there we go. I I love the candidness of that
at least
statement.
33 countries that have birthright citizenship. But Trump argues nonetheless
Hold on, I want to go back and see what those countries
that
are.
the U.S.
Um, Japan, China, Australia. I I will fully admit I do not know. I don't. Nope. I'm chuckling off nervousness. This is a bad thing. I need to learn geography better. Um, so some South America, well, majority of South America countries, and then Africa. Um, oh, I was trying to figure out what that one was. Why is it? Oh, there's only even a couple states that are have restricted. As did they make? I don't like the color coding. But yeah, I didn't actually realize. Oh, and that's India. Wow. Nope. Um, I'm sorry. I'm chuckling all of nervousness. I should. I will brush up on my geography.
Trump argues nonetheless that the U.S. is not one of them. So, on day one of his second term, he issued an executive order barring automatic citizenship for any baby born in the U.S. whose parents entered the country illegally or who were here on a temporary and often years long visa. So, how will this administration argue in favor of a once fringe theory on birthright citizenship? And how will the ACLU make the counter argument at the Supreme Court? To understand the issue, it's worth taking a stroll through American history. I really did think I needed a historian.
Oh, hi,
If you're
Izzy.
an originalist,
I'm
you
so
want to
I
know
missed
what
your
the founders wanted.
sorry I missed your message and that stuff. I had some reason TikTok chat was glitching out with me. How are you doing? But there we go.
When they enacted.
And also let me refresh. I'm trying.
This is a huge.
There we go. And there we go.
Full screen.
The thing I called you about is, what do we know about what?
Oh, Texas. Oh, doesn't Texas have a lot going on? Like, also, okay, Texas is a big state, so will always have a lot of things going on. But yeah. How are you? How are you doing in Texas? And I like how that. Okay. And I will need to. But yeah. Wait, did I fix it or not? Okay, well, I did.
What the founders thought about birthright citizenship.
Oh! Huh. Is Dallas blue? I will fully admit I do not know the demographics of, like, Texas, like... And hold on, I'm just curious. Okay, yeah, and Texas has a Republican trifecta when it comes to their government. Hmm. Also, I think it'd be nifty being an in-house nanny. You, like, could learn about so much different cultures. Oh. I'm sorry to hear that. Oh. Yeah. Really, just see who cares. Oh, that's, mm. I'm that's I ew. I think everyone should be paid for their labor. Of course, my dog is barking. Mhm. But what is this? I'm just curious. Wait, how old is this picture? Oh, it's from 2018. Okay. Ooh, that'd be a fun thing to look up. It's to see how much the state turnouts and that stuff. Huh. I got down a rabbit hole so quickly. But I hope you find a better employment situation. That's simple. Oh, what? Okay, that makes sense relatively. Hmm. Sorry, excuse me. For coffee. Wow, that's actually closer than I thought. That's a 500,000. What the heck is? I'll be right back, my dog. I now solved the dog's barking problem. Well, not solved. I just saw what she was barking at. But yeah. Going back to the video.
Is there any evidence that they didn't want immigrants?
The Declaration of Independence, one of the list of complaints against the king was that his policies regarding naturalization were discouraging immigration to the United States, and they wanted to populate this mostly empty, of course there were Native Americans, but otherwise empty continent.
So it seems the founders wanted people to come to America, but birthright citizenship didn't make it into the Constitution, not at first. That brings us to just a few years before the Civil War, when the Supreme Court issued its infamous Dred Scott decision.
So in the Dred Scott decision, Chief Justice Taney infamously said that no Black person, slave or free, could be a citizen of the United States. Of course, we fought a civil war. The nation rejected that vision. And in 1868, we ratified the 14th Amendment.
Here, we should take a moment to examine the citizenship part of the 14th Amendment, because the meaning of those words is what this case is really about. It says, quote, all
What?
persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States.
Also, like, one of the things I don't understand is why is it not being debated on the merits of can the executive order have this overreach? That's one of the things I don't understand. Why that's not being discussed.
President Trump maintains that the constitutional amendment was intended to be more limited than it's been in practice.
This was meant, when it was originally done, for the children of slaves. And that was a very good and noble thing to do, and I'm in favor of that 100%. But it wasn't meant for the entire world to occupy the United States.
But as Professor Frost notes, the framers of the 14th Amendment did want to include immigrants, even though many of them were targets of great hostility.
I like to remind my students that between 1845 and 1855, approximately 2 million people from Ireland fled to the United States. They were starving. They came in enormous numbers. There was certainly some prejudice and discrimination and xenophobic responses to them, but they were integrated. Their children were citizens. And that's the precedent that we brought with us into this debate over this.
Wasn't like there's a lot of surges of immigration from the 1890s to now. Well, what? So not to now. 1930. I'm a silly head. Words. My. Well, but yeah, there we go.
Citizenship laws.
Trump's interpretation of the 14th Amendment is avowedly more restricted, but until now, it's not been embraced by the courts or the legal norms of the country since the ratification of the amendment. And here, it would be valuable to look at World War II. Japanese citizens were held as enemy aliens in detention camps in the United States. But birthright citizenship was so ingrained in the country that their newborn children were still
So I was sticking out my tongue. I don't know how that came across in my VTuber model. I think detention facilities of anyone for just for their minority status is a horrible and vile thing.
automatically granted American citizenship because they were born on U.S. soil. There have been several key court decisions that have protected birthright citizenship during the past century and a half. Perhaps the most important among these is the case of Wong Kim Ark. He was born in San Francisco in 1873 to Chinese immigrants. He left the country in 1894, and when he returned, he was denied entry back into the United States. Wong challenged the denial, and the Supreme Court ruled in his favor. By a 6-2 vote, the justices interpreted the words "subject to the jurisdiction thereof" to mean that all children born in the U.S. were automatically granted U.S. citizenship. That brings us back to the Trump administration's argument. Basically, the Trump argument is that the language used in Wong Kim Ark's case assumes that his parents were legally in the country at the time of his birth because they had established a residence here, and there were no requirements for legal entry as there are today. Daniel Epstein is the vice president of America First Legal, the organization founded by the architect of Trump's immigration policies, Stephen Miller.
An individual who is naturally born in the United States is only considered a citizen if their parents have allegiance to the nation.
That also gets like very weird. Like the U.S. has always had weird things when it comes to like talking about like some countries. I want to say the U.S. make it so that your first priority is always to pledge allegiance to your country first, and then your religion second, or whatever other countries that are not part of the country that you want citizenship from. It's just, what does pledge allegiance mean? Like that's like a very, very vague term to the point like multiple people can have interpretation of it.
It's a misdemeanor to come into the United States without authorization. If you're committing a crime to come into the United States, that is
Oh, have fun with your new laptop, but thank you for hanging out with me, Izzy. I hope you have a good day.
strong evidence that you don't meet the traditional notion of allegiance.
The ACLU counters that the 14th Amendment is about children.
For the dolphin! Thank you! Thank you so much! I need to find a way to get, like, I will work on getting TikTok effects on this. I will add that to my to-do list. Oh. Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing.
We do not punish children for the sins of their fathers, but instead we wipe the slate clean. When you're born in this country, we're all Americans, all the same.
The Trump administration will also argue that birthright citizenship raises two other problems: a generic potential threat to national security and the problem of so-called birth tourism. So I looked into the numbers, and while there's little doubt that there is some birth tourism that exists, the numbers are really a tiny fraction of births in the United States.
I view just one illegal act as illegal, and birth tourism is illegal, and the law matters.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz is supporting the president's position, along with 11 other GOP senators and 16 House members.
Birthright.
But I think one of the things you have to talk about is like the debate of, okay, yes, it's an illegal action. I am not denying that. But my thing is, how much money are we having to spend as taxpayers now for judges and their judges' times, and the people to go over that case, when if we just made the person a citizen, we get money from that person as taxpayer return, if you want to think it as a fiscal thing, as in if you want to think about fiscally. And then you can argue morally, as in the kids had no choice in what the parents determined to do, so why should the children get punished for the sins of the parents, as they said earlier? And I don't like a lot of the administration is basically not helping those who are disenfranchised by events outside of their control. There's a lot of, I think 90% random number I made up, but like 90% of life you cannot control. And I do not think people should be punished for factors out of their control and that stuff. They should be punished for the actions they choose to do. And I do not I think what the administration doing is harming the people who, like, yes, there's all, like, you can choose what action is the best of the worst options, but understanding the society helps contribute to people deciding the bad options. And if we want people to stop making bad decisions, we should make society better so they would be less likely to make those bad decisions.
Citizenship is stupid. It is a bad policy. Why? Because it incentivizes illegal immigration. It makes absolutely no sense that someone breaks the law and they get rewarded with a very, very precious gift, which is American citizenship.
So you may wonder, what happens if the court finds in favor of the Trump administration? The ACLU argues that the consequences would be dire.
The president's executive order is
Oh, this is the person who actually argued the case today. I only listened to a segment of it, so I'm not gonna say argue like what I thought of her and that stuff. I just know that she was one of the people presenting the case to this SCOTUS. Okay.
attempting a radical rewriting of that 14th Amendment. What will immediately happen is that every month, tens of thousands of US born babies will be stripped of their citizenship. They may be stateless because their parents' country of nationality may not consider them to be citizens. And so you'll see a permanent underclass.
Also, what about happens if like can you do like a whole entire like a triple up effect in theory? Like what happens if like my parents like both, I don't know what the chances are of this, and like I know this probably will be a small percent. But what if both my parents were like children of undocumented individuals? Would that my citizenship come into question because they were just given citizenship? And the trickle down effect of that of like how that feels like getting very, very complicated, and that feels like that's going to strain the court systems even more. And one of I think the true problem of immigration in the US is the court system is bogged down and the courts are not getting enough systems in place to help expedite the cases because some people might take a couple years to even like I heard some very rare cases decades to become citizens. And so I think this is going to make the situation worse because it's going to overburden the system.
Of people who have no nationality.
Daniel Epstein counters that those are issues in need of policy solutions.
The policy problem needs a legislative solution, not for the courts to kind of put their thumb on the scale as to how to resolve what likely is going to be a political challenge and a policy challenge.
Translation, a bit of a big mess?
However one defines a mess, there certainly, my view is that it's a mess that you have millions of individuals who came into this country illegally.
Somewhat.
That's a hold on. How many birth rates citizenship happen per year? And like I know this can't be inaccurate. One where we can go by the AI answer. I'm going to just do Penn State because it's a university. It seems like AI did grab from us. Oh, it's actually about this case. Huh. Oh, what a first time. Yeah, okay. Wow, I didn't realize it was gonna be like 2 point. Wow, that's cool. I know that since the U.S. population is actually in a deficit, so like this would be an amazing amount of boon of people coming in because I understand that the base of the pyramid has to be bigger than the top because Social Security, they're talking about pushing that back even more or reducing benefits. And so like having more immigration can actually make it so those issues do not have to come to pass. Um like that's a decent amount of people. But it was actually um that's quarter like slightly above a quarter of a million people. That's not millions of people. I'm curious where he got his numbers from millions. Um I
Surprisingly, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops also weighed in with its thoughts on this case. Here's
didn't know that
Bishop
was a
Daniel
thing.
Flores.
If citizenship is withdrawn from the children should would be the ones to bear the brunt of this removal. I have people asking me this now in my diocese, Bishop, and I'm going to get in trouble if I give food to somebody that I'm not sure of their documentation. Can we help these people? Because we think we need to, because they're people, and they were born here.
Population.
How you? I mean, I don't. It just saddens me because like there are people who are getting impacted. I think you should be able to give freely and that stuff. If you want to give food, housing, or necessities to people in need, I think you should be able to do it. I don't even care about like if those people who are here illegally and that stuff because I believe every humans that has certain things that should be prescribed to them just because they're human. Food, water, shelter. I'm gonna say internet, which I understand is a Gen Z answer. But basically, without internet access, you're hampering the ability to find a job or get information at this time. Um, and the certain bedness, like whatever your bed is, like I know some people have futons, some people have mattresses. Um, and even like food gets complicated because of sensitivities or allergies. But I think everyone should be given those accesses.
Experts say that if automatic birthright citizenship were to be voided, the consequences would be profound and counterintuitive. The Population Research Institute at Penn State, for instance, estimates that
Did I? Hold on. I'm just curious. Was that it was just reading? It was. Who's here?
a repeal of birthright citizenship would result in 2.7 million more people living here illegally by 2045. People who previously would have been entitled to birthright citizenship but now have no such
Oh,
citizenship for themselves or to pass on to their children. In a related case last year, Justice Brett Kavanaugh asked at an oral argument, how would a hospital know that the parents of a child are illegally in the country? What would hospitals do with a newborn? What would states do? The answer from
and it also gets to the point of what is this going to increase the amount of kids? Because there's sanctuaries. I don't know the proper terminology. There are certain states where you can drop off your kid at a church or a hospital, no questions asked, and they go into the foster care system, which I know there's problems with foster care systems. But more of to sidestep all this as a parent, when I just if I wanted to make sure my kids ins just basically drop my kids off. I know it's probably more complicated than this, but drop my kids off there and just leave and pretend I just don't know the kids and that stuff. Like, there might be a legal trail back to some of them, but some of the people, they might not be able to find the paper trail, and so what do you do about kids who are just left anonymously and you have no idea who the parents are?
Trump's Solicitor General, federal officials will have to figure that out.
And I don't like creating new issues unless you have a solution to those new problems you're trying to create. I'm saying just offer them in the first place. Um, but yeah. So I am going to do another ad break so we're not interrupted in our next segment. But I am also going to use mm, and to the next uh to thing on the to-do list is that Trump is signing an executive order um to basically limit mail-in ballots. Okay. Okay. I don't know. I think I did accident my screen. Oh, I'm not sure. Um, but basically, now I'm clear. Uh, so POTUS signed the executive. There we go. There we go. There we go. Uh, so basically, which the synopsis of this is, it's going to make it so DHS will get a list of voters from each state. Lawsuits have already started to argue the states giving this up. But and each state has to give up the voter rolls 60 days before the election, and the postal service will only allow absentee ballots from approved list of people. Which from Trump's statement, it seems like that's for travel, which travel is very vague, and I don't know what that means. Like, the very interpretational statement. Or if they're military service members. Basically, and and make it so it's required for special logos and barcodes to be on all the packages. So multiple states are already fighting this. One of the concerning is the approval list that I do that I'm questioning about how that's going to be built. And I'm going to click on this.
And I'm going. You're going to go to the Supreme Court?
Oh.
I do believe. Sit there and listen. Because I have listened to this argument for so long, and this is not about Chinese billionaires or billionaires from other countries.
Why
all
is
of a
he?
sudden have 75 children or 59 children in one case or 10 children.
Oh, this is addressing the birth rate citizenships and the mail-in ballots. Okay, well, I guess that's a good way to tie the two segments together.
Citizens. This was about slaves. And if you take a look, slaves, we're talking about slaves from the Civil War. And if you take a look at when it was filed, all of this legislation, all of this, everything having to do with birthright citizenship, it was at the end of the Civil War. The reason was it had to do with the babies of slaves and the protection of the babies of slaves. It didn't have to do with the protection of multi-millionaires and billionaires wanting to have their children get an American citizenship.
Why would? Okay, I'm confused at why he's talking about millionaires and billionaires with this. Like, there are people who are coming to US to get citizenships for their kids. I'm not going to deny that. But I don't know those individuals would be rich. And I don't think that's also the amount of how do I word this? I think that that thing has the assumption that US is a great and amazing country. And US has every country has its problems. Why would someone come to US if they are physically wealthy or wealthy already? And if you're fiscally wealthy, you could probably choose what country you're going to go to, and why would you choose US? I mean, one of them could be business interest, and US is one of the well, it depends on what size of business where that goes into like a lot of minutia there. Because you could argue other countries do it better with smaller mom and pop businesses. So I don't know how you got to the assumption that US is a great US is a great creation a great country for people to immigrate into to the point that they are.
It is the craziest look at the original birthright citizenship papers, they all happened right after the Civil War. The reason was it had to do with the babies of slaves. And hopefully
Let me see if I can find the transcript because he's repeating.
Scammed. We're getting all of these people. They're selling the rights to them. People are making a big living, getting hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars from bringing people in.
God, there are so many faults with that logic. Okay, so what? I don't even know if coyotes is the right term. I would have to learn more about the correct terminology. But from my understanding, that sounds like you're describing coyotes, and I don't know if they're getting that much money. But first, let's just say for sake of argument, I agree with them. Why don't we close the loopholes then and make it so there's an easier, like, a logical and like a clear process about how to attain citizenship? The best way to get rid of a black market, which is what coyotes do, is exploiting a black market of since it's illegal. People are going. So if you make it easier, you can make it so the black market no longer exists. I don't understand. And also, again, sources. Where is he getting proof that those individuals are making that much money? So yeah.
And say, congratulations, your whole family is going to be a citizen
Ooh.
of the United States of America. That's not what it was for. It wasn't for billionaires bringing people in or family in. It was for the...
Also, how many billion, like, maybe I would, if you want to argue maybe rich people come over to the country for a US citizenship, that's fine. But what like, there's a difference between, like, being millionaire rich and then billionaire rich. And I don't even know how many billionaires are on the planet. Also, one of the reasons why I was talking about earlier, about why US is a great nation, I'm like, why not go to, like, a country that has, like, better social services, has more protections for its citizens, stronger supports in different aspect, if that's medically speaking, if you are to become homeless and getting yourself out of their worst case scenario.
Children of slaves. And what you really have to do, and I don't think the lawyers talk about it as much, look at when the Civil War ended and look at the date of when this was enacted.
Gary Grumbuck, let me go to you, because as we heard the president take questions there, he was asked about these blockbuster arguments that are happening tomorrow at the Supreme Court. And interestingly, the president says he's going to go. Now, we have heard the president suggest before that he was going to go watch oral arguments. He didn't. He has been to the Supreme Court a couple times in his first term, if I remember correctly, for the sort of formal ceremonies for Justice Gorsuch, Justice Kavanaugh, obviously during his term, that first term. It would be a big deal if the president shows up to oral arguments, right, as the justices are hearing on both sides about this birthright citizenship issue that has been something that President Trump has been talking about for years. It would basically be rewriting the Constitution via sort of presidential mandate.
This would be a very big deal. And to our records here, this has never actually happened before. A president of the United States has never attended oral arguments, especially on a policy that he himself wants to see get across the line from the Supreme Court. Now, this is, of course, related to birthright citizenship, one of the president's biggest domestic policy items of the second term. Lower courts have all turned it down, have all said this is just blatantly unconstitutional. This is something that is going to be a very hot topic tomorrow. The justices, we will see how they rule. In some of the early stages of this case, it did seem like many of the justices were appearing to be against this idea, but we will see certainly what happens. But back to this judicial independence idea, the Supreme Court, is supposed to be an independent body, free of politics, free of decisions related to policy. And they may be looking at, down from their seats up there at the court, the President of the United States, surrounded by no doubt security, surrounded by no doubt other members of his administration, and certainly that could perhaps make them lean one way or the other. And I think that is certainly going to be a very notable sight inside the Supreme Court tomorrow.
I wonder if there's
Gary,
gonna
what
have
about
to
Gary, thank you very much.
there's gonna have to be like laws or like things to do that because like that would be pressuring, and I can see that an argument being made that the president. I don't know if they would actually argue the president's making a disturbance, but in a sense, someone could argue that he is. But a disturbance, as in it's harder for the judges to be unbiased type of disturbance. And so I wonder if that's going to have to be a future thing that future Congresses will have to deal with. I don't think that's going to be viewed at this Congress. Well, the 119th Congress is not going to look over that. But I'm curious to see if future Congresses will actually make some legislation because of Trump going to this case.
It's going to be fascinating to watch. We should also know, too, the president may not go, right? I mean, it's possible he ends up not going at all, even though he said he will. We don't know.
He has certainly said that before. During the tariffs case, he said he was not going to be there. So that's absolutely something that we will see what happens.
Well, boy, this just got even more interesting in Washington. Gary, thanks. Let me bring in Ryan Nobles now, of course, our chief Capitol Hill correspondent. And there's a lot to this, Ryan, because the president was talking about all of this as he was signing an executive order related to mail-in voting that is complicated. It is questionable. Apparently, there were, according to our team, some folks who are sort of notable election deniers who were in the room as this was going down. Let's not lose sight of that piece of it either.
Yeah,
that's intriguing.
There was a couple of things that the president kind of said that made it obvious that he knows how difficult this is going to be to implement. The first being,
explain what it is, and then the
right. Well, he basically signing an executive order that would force the United.
Oh, that reminds me because of the reasons why it's difficult to implement. And they might touch upon this. So this, I try to go in blind to these videos, but back to what I was saying. Is one, each state basically has for federal elections, states each determine how they're going to let citizens in their state vote for the federal elections. And so so Trump is overstepping in that regard. He's also overstepping in what the Postal Service can do. Because the Postal Service also has governors which can determine how the mail is taken to deal with. And like there is ways you could sidestep some of this. Like having mail-in exclusive ballot boxes just for federal elections, but that's going to be fiscally very expensive. Why? Just expensive.
United States Postal Service to only send mail-in ballots to people that have been approved as official voters, which would essentially force the federal government to create a voter roll of people that are approved by the federal government in order to vote. And then it would also involve the United States Postal Service on that level. And what the president alluded to over the course of this conversation was that he expects basically that there will be a judge somewhere that he described as a rogue judge that will rule that this is.
Also, I think it's very interesting when elected officials especially, but like you can do this for any person, when they label a person that they disagree with like their name calling them. We can have debate if you should or should not do that. That's not what I'm talking about. My main point is talking about, I think it shows the mindset and why do you have to label your dissidents with a name that just demeans or insults them? Be like, hey, there might be judges who oppose me. You don't need to label them. And understand that people may oppose you. Those are natural things. So I find it very interesting that there is labeling in that regard.
Unconstitutional and say it can't go into effect. And there's a reason for that, because it is unconstitutional. The Constitution clearly states that elections are run by states.
Right,
each state
right.
has
How do you square that?
Yeah, how do you square that? And so this is definitely going to be challenged in court.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have congressional approval, let alone judicial approval. And so this has a tough road ahead. And this is, again, the president waving at this idea that there's some massive problem with voter fraud across the country, of which there's just not any evidence to support that claim.
The other thing he said, and I just want to mention it because we've talked about it over the course of the last hour, which is his so-called big, beautiful ballroom that he wants to build. A judge has come down late today and said he got to pause construction. The Trump administration is appealing already, but the president, again, talked about this. I mean, he wants this ballroom to be constructed. It's an important priority for him. And as you know, because you watch his...
Okay, and I think that's going into our next issue. I don't... would have to... But yeah. So, like, it's very interesting thing. Oh... But, like, so multiple states are already beginning to oppose this already. And people who, if people want to actually fight against this piece of legislation, well, I don't know if it's called legislation, but executive order, they can contact their federal or state Congress. In my Discord server, you could, I have links so you know how to contact people, your congressman at federal level. State-wise, I do not have anything there. I will create a list for that in the future. If people and if you want to be ahead of the curve and prepare for worst case scenario, which I believe the mindset prepare for the worst but hope for the best, is get a copy of your birth certificate or get a passport. Also because this, and also Trump is doing this also during a time where the SAVE Act is basically stagnant in Congress because the Senate is on recess until the April 16th, I believe, the 13th. It's a Monday. So that is paused, and the House. I have to. I'm checking if they're actually in session because Mike Johnson has done pro firmas. I'm going to look up that. 2 Paul sessions in earlier. There we go. And so there is no session today. That's interesting. But like, so like you can be over there and also go to the state level and give them like more shielding or protecting laws. And basic encouraging states to have more protections for voters. Possible and I mentioned before, but the drop boxes for official ballots, but I don't know if every state can do that. I think only some of the more what's the word? States that make a surplus in their budgets will be able to do that. And that's going to benefit only the populous states. So states that are own who have a lower population might not have ability to do that option. And even if, let's just say that Trump executive order is shut down by the courts and go to his reviews and shoots it down as well. I presume that this administration is going to try to make other executive orders and other bills to try to get around this. So I'd still encourage people to petition their states or even determine who you vote for in the coming midterm elections. For what rights you want to be enshrined and protected. And I'm going to do another ad break because I don't want to be interrupted in my another segment, but thank you so much for everyone who stays during ads. During the ads, people can play words on stream, so please have fun with that. So this is we're going to be talking about the Trump's White House ballroom project is now put on hold for now. I think. Oh yeah, judge blocks it. And U.S. District Judge Richard Leon from the District of Columbia blocks it. It's pausing the order for 14 days. Um, so yeah. Also, random factoid: the East Wing was actually originally created in 1902, and so we're going to.
A federal judge today ordered the Trump administration to stop construction of its $400 million White House ballroom project. District Judge Richard Leon sided with a preservationist group that called for further reviews and input from Congress. In his opinion, the judge wrote that Trump is the steward of the White House, not its owner, and that, quote, no statute comes close to giving the president the authority he claims.
Steward is an interesting word. I would say tenants, but I guess tenants do have a certain right to change their. That gets very complicated with tenanting estate, but steward's a very interesting choice of word. I like it though. I also, I'm not saying that. I just like the choice of word.
Claims to have. But the judge also delayed enforcement of his order for 14 days and acknowledged that the administration is likely to appeal. Also today, a separate federal judge ruled that
That
President Trump's executive today to mark 4 years.
I don't. Okay. I was hoping to go into to look into that differently and what we're doing. Um. So we're going to. In the meantime, as I'm double checking something. And so the case has already been appealed since that video went up. And so also if people want to track that number, track that case, it is National Trust for Historic Preservation of the United States versus National Park Service 12 CV -04 13 16. So you. Okay. I was making sure I got all the numbers right. And so anyone can look up that case and see the status of it. And also a related case to this is talking about the overhaul of the Kennedy Center and adding Trump's name to it. And so this case is related, so this case could impact that other case of the Kennedy Center. Huh. And we're going to. There we go. So the other thing, one of the other big problems of this is the amount of a lot of corporate donors have donated to this, which could be seen as like, if I do this, you scratch my back on later on, which could be seen as a bribery attempt because there was major donors. Google, Amazon, okay. Palantir, which that's surprising. So Meta, Apple, Lockheed Martin. Oh, defense contractor. I was looking familiar. Comcast, Alteria, Coinbase, Palantir, T-Mobile, Ripple, Hardware, Rock International, Tether America, Union Pacific Railroad. Oh, the railroad's also merging with another railroad under this time, and they want to merge, and there is anti-monopoly laws, and so this could help also make it so they can merge, which does prove the idea of bribery or scratch my back, I scratch your back, if you don't want to call it Micron technology. Oh, they create semiconductors. Caterpillar. Oh, thank you for joining me, Beth. There's Booz Hamilton, which is like cybersecurity and defense contractor as well. Also, we're going to. I also realize this is a right-leaning source, but okay. And I don't let me do this real quick. Because I think my avatar is in the middle of it, so I want to make it so she's not. Okay, there we go. There we go. HP. Why is HP? Okay. HP, Next Extra Energy, Reynolds America, and then private and family donors, the Adelson family. Oh, they're the ones who also gave him. Who's seeing what? Also, I have to double check, but there is a website I want to double. We're going to double check there. Also, if there's any questions, I open the floor to people so they can ask questions if they want. And one of the things I do want to show, and I should just bookmark it since I'm going to keep referring to it a lot, is there we go. The breakdown of billionaire political spending by party, and this is reported by the FEC data, and this is since March 1st of 2026. So this number could actually increase as midterms are coming up higher. Pro-Democrat 20%, 20.2%, aka 87.7 million money from billionaire politicians, 79.5%, aka 344.3 million from billionaires. And then other, which we do 20.2 plus 79.5 is not, so 0.3% is other. You can see by top billionaire families, Musk is 71 million. Yes, family is 55 million. Brockman 25 million. Ubelheim 15.8 million. Warsman family 15 million. Singer family 14.6 million. Warren family 14. Simon, every name before this was Republican. Simon is 2.7 million. I can also link this in the resources of my server in case people want to read it. And if there's and you can also see what PACs they back. So like 90 million to MAGA Inc. America PAC 40.3 million. And where is oh. And if you want a more breakdown, this is the whole entire source, which basically is just copy and pasted because that FEC data is public access. But back to Stephanie Brody, like it gets to the point that these are private individuals, and so you might not know the private individuals' names, but you probably know the stocks they hold or the companies that they are major investors in or actually are board of directors on. What the and going to we're going to I have no idea. Okay, there we go. So like that's a major but basically if what people can do to oppose this is one, vote for more laws or politicians who want transparency within their government, especially when it comes to donorships and the ability that for billionaires to donate and what they can donate for. Because even let's just say that this is all on the up and up, the appearance of bribery or the scratch your back, I scratch your back mentality has a very insidious look in that um it does not look like the US president or the administration or even Congress. You can just give them money and you can make them change their opinion with that. And so they're not for the people anymore, which cannot the appearance of that alone is very problematic. Um and basically it's a similar right now the next step I believe is in tomorrow. The new edition they're they have plans and it has to be confirmed. It's most likely going to get confirmed, but you can actually argue against the those group of people, the National Park Service, about if you want this to happen. And so people can still you can still make petitions for them and to make it so it does not happen. Trump currently believes that the so all the construction above ground has been currently halted, but he believes that they can still keep doing the underground implementation because of security. And the last time that was upgraded was after uh Bush during the last national security issue of that year for him. And Trump is talking about making it resistant to drones attacking. I'm which okay. So that's all going on. So we would be very interested, but I also think there has to be a case about like yeah, the quid pro quo mentality. Thank you. That is a more succinct way of saying that. Uh, so and there's also the debate of is it's a historical monument, and like there is certain representatives who are already talking about if the Democrats won in 2028 that they would try to rebuild the East Wing back to what it was previously. Again, that's the assumption that a Democrat candidate wins presidency in 2028. So that has to be done first. I also think that clearer laws have to be made for what the president can and cannot do. And I feel like it gets to the point that there's so many layers of laws that there's not a clear idea about who holds who not I was gonna say who holds accountable, but more of who do you ask for permission and more of what are the restrictions I have in this role I can do. I think the restrictions of the roles of the president should be more clearly enshrined. Because up for interpretation, on the worst day, up interpretation lets people who have malintentions take advantage of that role. And as a role of the president that can have very terrifying consequences, not just on US, but on the whole entire world. I got tongue-tied again. And yeah. Also, uh, and it was also sorry, National Capital Planning Commission. The NCPC is the one who is going to be voting tomorrow, April 2nd, and submitting public comment. People can submit public comments to them. So it's going to be very interesting how they're going to art. But it looks like there's certain people put in positions so that vote can go in easier for this administration's goals. Hmm. So it's also very interesting that there's so many things happening back to back to back with everything that's going on. Uh, and I'm going to prepare for the next segment a little bit early. Uh, that's weird. Mhm. I don't. Oh. So the next story is I was okay. Moving on to fixing that is the next thing is the Republicans are now I are now working on their current goals about funding for the government. There seems to be a standstill since the Senate's on recess until the 13th. And the bill which the Senate signed right before they left, which basically got every part of the government funded besides ICE or slash the border agents. Um, basically, Mike Johnson's basically not the bill's not being voted on, and so Mike Johnson, well, the House presented a new bill and they sent it off to the Senate. Basically everything with their version of the budget bill with ICE getting funded. And so it's a standstill until Senate or House decides something. And the House wasn't in session today. Or so um there.
Okay, for now, it looks like TSA workers might get paid next week after President Trump.
They did get paid on the 30th. So they did actually get paid. They were successfully paid on the 30th.
Trump once again went around Congress. He signed a memo today to unilaterally pay them as the stalemate on Capitol Hill drags on. Now, the Department of Homeland Security says TSA employees could get paychecks as soon as Monday. But the big question is how? The actual memo says, quote, I hereby direct the Secretary of Homeland Security in coordination with the Director of the OMB to use funds that have a reasonable and logical nexus.
Oh, it's hard to hear the news? Oh, I didn't realize that. I'm sorry. Hold on, let me. Okay. Let me. There we go. And so weird. I mean, okay, I can.
To TSA operations to provide TSA employees with the compensation and benefits that would have accrued to them if not for the Democrat-led DHS.
Is that better?
Okay, but no one has actually said where these funds supposedly exist or where that money is coming from, let alone how are they going to get the direct deposit. Meanwhile, in Congress, the branch of our government that, actually has the constitutional power of the purse, Republicans and Democrats in the Senate had a deal that would have DHS except for immigration and border enforcement, and it passed unanimously. But in the House, Speaker Mike Johnson rejected that
Okay,
deal,
there we go. That should clear
calling
up the
it
audio.
a joke. He also accused Democrats of taking funding negotiations hostage. So instead, the House is set to send an 8-week stopgap bill to fund all of DHS to the Senate, where Chuck Schumer says it's dead on arrival. Let's get a live look at the House floor. They are voting on the stopgap plan right now. The nightcap is still here. Peter. Okay, Peter. First of all, I don't know why they are voting on this thing. The Senate took a long time to get to where they arrived last night. And
I believe the Senate, cool. Thank you. The audio is so weird sometimes with YouTube. But no, it's very, the Senate, I want to say like 6 times, voted no to the House's version of the bill. And then the Democrats proposed their own bill, and that took at least more than 9 votes itself. And those are 2 separate bills. So totality about just bills to consider the budget took at least 15 votes for the Senate to agree on something. And so all I can guess is they're trying to delay, but I don't know what they're trying to delay till. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see what the Senate does.
the idea that they're all of a sudden going to be somewhere different when they've literally left town is, I don't know. But this feels like it's going very differently than past stalemates, okay? Yeah. I wrote a piece about this today.
I will also agree with that. I'm actually very impressed with the Democrats and how long they're standing strong on this. I was worried that the Democrats are going to bend a knee on this issue. I actually have no idea what grab tap is. I have to double check what that is. But like, it's very interesting. The Democrats are not, and like, it's fair issues because like one of the, of course they want to get ICE and DHS agents. I'm doing that to encompass everyone. They have like body cameras and to do what they do, but they're also talking about the Fourth Amendment because some ICE agents, in theory, could enter a home without, if they just think that there is an undocumented individual in your home. In theory, they could just enter without even a warrant, and that is a very troubling and worrying thing. And I agree with the Democrats standing strong. I'm just happy and amazed to see it.
I'm going to just quote myself. I have the privilege here. I wrote that the Republicans' entire strategy was to create pressure, assign blame, wait for Democrats to fold, and it has worked in the past. This time it didn't. So Democrats can actually say this is a win because in the Senate, at least, they did not cave to the pressure. There was a deal on the table where they wouldn't have gotten any of the reforms they asked for, but it could have looked like a win, but they didn't take it. So a little credit, but like, what is going on?
Now, it's fascinating that in Washington, it looks like a win because every Democrat stuck together, and that's not
the bar is low.
The normal thing, right? Exactly. It did not, though, however, result in the reforms that they said that they wanted to have in the first place. So the deal that they accepted would still have allowed ICE to do all the things everybody objected to, and the Republicans would have to find a way to fund it through what they call reconciliation without a filibuster. Now, of course, the House has blown it up, and we don't know where it's going to go. And in the end, we're here a month, 6 weeks into this stalemate. And what's amazing is until the last couple of days, nobody even seemed to be taking it very seriously as if it was a crisis. Government isn't working. And it's like, if you were at home and you didn't pay your bills because you were just mad at your spouse about the way you were going about, household chores, the companies that you weren't paying would be saying, I don't give a crap. You have an obligation to pay. And here we are in Washington. We don't even treat this as a crisis anymore.
Kevin, again, that Senate bill, the House Republicans have said, we're not doing that. We're going to do our own thing. It would have funded the other parts of DHS. I'm talking, yes, TSA, but also the Coast Guard, FEMA. I'm from Nebraska, Tornado Alley. It is tornado season right now in this country, and people do need the FEMA funds. But they rejected that, and, to be very clear, ICE still has all this money from the One Big Beautiful Bill, so it really doesn't make a difference. This is not hampering ICE's ability to, do their thing. So break down for us how important, and, I know you know this, Dan, how important DHS actually is. Like, are we unsafe right now? More so, put the war aside. Are we more unsafe because they're not funding DHS?
Why do I get the war?
I know, right?
Look, anybody who claims to win today, shame on Capitol Hill, right? I'm a guy. I covered security forces, the military, law enforcement, intelligence services. So few things drive me nuts as much as when I see politicians using people as pawns and using law enforcement, security force people as pawns. These are the guys that put their lives.
Also, like, I don't. From my understanding, is the TSA has months and months of training, and at the current I'm trying to think of the word. The current ICE agent, or at least the new ICE agents, were only trained in 49 days in honor of Trump being the 49th president. One, I think anyone who have military weapons but only be trained for 49 days, I think is gross negligence, because I don't think I could be trained. Like, I don't. You can make an argument that maybe veterans would be trained in it, or current military, but I do not think the average civilian would know how to go from that and the ramifications of that. And I also think it's just a bad thing for military weapons. Makes sense in an area that it's a what's the word? Does not have stable, and it has a stable country. In the US, even though I get annoyed at her sometimes, is a stable country, so I do not think using those level of arms, I think, just causes fear and panic and creates a populace that's afraid to actually protest. And I think that's a bad thing in either direction. I think that citizens should always be able to protest anytime they want. Even if I disagree with the reason for protest, you have the right to have a protest, and a safe one. And a great amount of force, it does not make it safe. It creates panic. But like TSA agents, I heard like a couple stories of where they were looking at people's citizenship, and they were like skipping the cops and going straight to ICE agents. And like efficiency wise, I understand that. But I'm like, about judges and
On the lines, the men and the women who take these government jobs and raise their right hands and do things as either whether it's getting us through the airport or getting bad guys out of the country, or preparing for all the things you just talked about, those disasters and contingencies. So yeah, I used to cover the Pentagon, and long ago we were on a trip to Iraq with Bob Gates when he was the SecDef, and there was a looming government shutdown, and we asked him, are you worried that the troops aren't going to get paid, like that while we're in the middle of an actual big war back then? And his reply to it was something to the effect of, I always think that it's wisest that we pay the guys with the guns, right? Like, how do you make them a part of this? And it's almost like not understanding the impact of bombing Iran, that it's going to close the Straits of Hormuz. How do you not know that putting TSA on the line is going to end?
And it also doesn't help that negotiation power has been boiled down to the point that the negotiation power is not as strong as it once used to be. And so it's very hard for any person, well, actually any group of people, to have negotiation power, because the idea of with what happened with the flight coordinators during Reagan. I have to double check if that's the correct terminology for them. With the 11,000 of them being fired in one day because they were protesting not getting paid. And basically that was a form of pressure, and basically you just got rid of that pressure valve. And I'm like, to have that job, you already have to have a certain physicality, like 20/20 vision. You have to meet a bunch of criteria already. And the obstacles do not make sense. But back to my point of, I think that this has been boiling on for a couple decades now, because it's been boiling from the idea of lack of negotiation powers because of people's voices have not been heard.
in a crisis like this, that's just going to piss off everybody trying to go to the airports. By the way, I wasn't supposed to be here today. I was supposed to be in Florida. It's supposed to be spring break, but we canceled our trips in part because of this, because of the chaos at the airport and the prices of everything going on. I said, I'm not going to deal with this right now.
I mean, it's a lot. And I mean, okay, so what we're talking about here is the real life impact of these policy decisions. We see the long lines at the airports. I mean, look, I'm happy you're here, but I'm sad you're not on spring break.
I'm thrilled to be here. And I know Dan's going to come in and he's going to make it all better, right?
Well, the airports are a mess right now. And so the question is, how do Democrats effectively sell this fight to voters? Because right now there's all this sound when people go into the airports and they're saying Congress needs to get it together. Some people who I think are very plugged in are saying, you know, this is Republicans. But for the most part, people are saying, oh, this is Congress not working again.
You make very clear what Trump's America is. Trump's America, it's like two boarding lanes. One is for him and his cronies, and the other is for you. Private jet bookings are up 39%.
I didn't know private jets could be booked. This is the first time I'm hearing about this. Also, do private jet, like, do they have to go through TSA? I don't know.
Since this whole mess started. And by the way, because of the big, beautiful bill, you can write off that private jet now. You know, you wait in line for 4.5 hours.
Wait, good to know. Would you say you can write that up?
Get us the jet.
Yeah, you're waiting 4.5 hours in line now, but cabinet members can just circumvent the line and go straight in.
Simone's the only one at this table who can afford a private.
That's right. That's right. But as you're saying, that the TSA workers are unpaid, but the cabinet members haven't missed a paycheck. It's like Marie Antoinette in the sky. Let them fly private.
Well, I mean, John, Congress already had bad approval numbers. Nobody likes the government with the American people.
But, like, also, they do have a fair point. Like, I don't know what else the Democrats can do, because I feel like Democrats are trying every single thing they can. And, like, I'm not saying, like, every move of theirs is perfect, because that would be glorifying to the point of absurdity. But it's more of, why do the Democrats have to be the adults in the room while the Republicans, I feel like, don't. The current, Republicans in like the Congress right now, it feels like they're not trying to make progress. They are just trying to invest their own interests. And I understand the Democrats have their own interests for different things. There has to get to a point where bipartisan thing becomes a thing, but every issue is a partisan issue, which I don't think is a healthy or good thing for any country, for the governments. One, because we have a two-party system. For each side to have every issue being a partisan issue, that will slow everything down to the point nothing is getting done, which we can see in our Congress. I would have to check the exact numbers of seeing how many bills are passed compared to like previous Congresses, but I know that one of the, I must say 117th was the least unproductive presidents. Yeah, no, that's fair. Like, I don't know if they're spoiled. Like this, I guess spoiled brats is a fair argument, because like the GOP doesn't really care. No, I'm like thinking about it. It's more of, it's like, I would say brats, I always think of kids, but I think it's like spoiled teenagers, because they know the pressure points to make mom and dad say whatever they want. Is what I was more thinking about. And I do not like, I think a lot of this issue would be solved on both sides if a part of the government is not funded, Congress does not get paid. I mean, like, your paycheck is paused until you agree to a budget. I think we get bills through, much like budget bills especially. The first people who do not get paid are Congress if a budget bill does not get through. Budget. And that other part of the government that's going to get behind and pay gets funded in that meantime. Like, whatever Congress would have got paid instead. Because, like, I will fully admit, I've only been tapped into, like, politics for the last 2 years. And so, like, I wouldn't surprise me if Democrats have, like, done this. The only reason I'm blaming a lot of the Republicans is, one, they have majority in the House and the Senate. They do not have a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. So it actually amazes me that the budget bill past that. But, like, I think that has to be some stock buybacks have to be prevented. Congress members cannot buy stocks, including their families. But I'm fine if you want to do stepping stones. Congress members at first cannot buy stocks, and then we can add their families on later on. Yes. Um, term limits, age limits as well. I think that you have. Part of me wants to be cynical and do the harsher point of view. If you turn past, if you become older than the age of retirement at some point during your term, you can't run. I'll be lower that down to the point of if you're over the age of retirement, you cannot run for a federal Congress. House Congresses, state Congresses, I have to think about that more before I can actually say anything. But like I agree with tenants. I mean, even the House, I think that there should be a max of 12 years in Congress in totality. In case you want to have like multiple terms in the House and then go to the Senate. So you can have like one term in the Senate and then like one in the House. So you can have balancing. I also think it will help invigorate with new, fresh ideas because part of the problem with our current Congress, yeah, I agree. No, I agree with the president as well. Is that there's a lack of fresh ideas coming in because a lot of Congress doesn't understand the current problems that are for the median voter age now. I mean, like right now, we can argue. I think that the Democrats are not understanding what are the primary vote issues people have. That are like that the Democrats have to agree to change these things, or you will not get my vote. And I know that hello, welcome into my stream. But there has to be a discussion about I was going on a roll there and I forgot. About limitations of power and that stuff. And an idea of any new fresh ideas are needed for a country and that stuff. It'd be very also interesting because like just majors or education has changed a lot for some of the people before since they went to college into now. And I accidentally played the video. Oh, welcome back, Izzy. Oh, I also did fix the audio from earlier. And going back to this video.
It's not capable of governing effectively.
Well, I mean,
capable of running the executive branch effectively, and they're not capable of running the legislature effectively.
won't this just cause this current kerfuffle, if you will, just cause lasting damage? Like if people didn't have confidence before, if people were maybe thinking, oh, Republicans don't seem to know what they're doing with the government, we're not getting any of the things they told us we would get if we voted for Donald Trump and we did these things, put them back in power. We're in a midterm election year, and I know there are real people's lives and things at stake. But to be very clear, elections are a big part about how change comes about in this country. The legislative branch is very important. And so the people who are in charge of the legislative branch, they matter. And what they are willing and not willing to do makes a difference in the lives of people all over this country.
I don't think anything that the Trump administration or that the Republican Congress is doing right now is helping the Republican Party. But I'm not sure they're capable of acting differently. You know, maybe Mike Johnson just can't get the Senate.
My thing is like, there's obviously a disconnect about why is that weird? Okay, that I think there could be argument made that Mike Johnson doesn't have the ability to control his party right now. And I don't. Okay, there we go. And I really need to look into the history and see how I have to double check the House positions. I don't know what Mike Johnson. I want to say Speaker of the House, but have to double check to see if that's the correct name for Mike Johnson's position.
Package, which was passed with unanimous consent through the House. You know, you normally think of the House as something that the majority party can basically do whatever they want, and if the leadership of the other chamber and if the president wants it solved, they can do it. But they may not be able to get the votes to do it. It's just too chaotic of a party. You have too many extremes within the party that can't reconcile their priorities. It's not a pretty picture.
But don't they want the chaos? I mean, Peter, I always feel they live off of that. They promised it to the American people. They promised they would break these systems. That's what Doge was all about. They cut half the government last year.
I will say that Doge does not make sense to me because, like, we have inspector generals who are supposed to double check our government and see if they're following the budget. And I do not understand, like, government is complicated to the point of, I think, I understand why it's complicated, but it's like getting to the point of efficiency. Like, if it's too complicated, how efficient can it run? I understand that. But it's more of since it's so complicated right now and this is the current system we have, can we have people who have not worked through the system or have a great understanding of that system say where you should cut the fat, so to speak? Being able to saying the ones who should cut it. I think that gets into a very risky territory because not knowing the fallout of how, if I cut this, the impacts of that, and how long is it going to be until I feel all the fallouts of that one decision I decided to cut.
Just slice.
Well, people believed in the Doge because they thought it would.
They keep selling that.
It would
promise.
bring them some relief.
Iran was the same thing. It's like we'll break it first and we'll fix it later. And trust us, this is what we're going to do.
Well,
I think there's still a part of the party, I think, that, or the MAGA movement.
Oh, thank you. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize my chat did not auto scroll. That's good to know. Huh. But like no problem. Thank you for wishing me luck. I missed your earlier comment about that.
They think that's a good message. I think they should go with it.
Well, I'll tell you that. It's an interesting question.
I'm not defending it. I'm just saying I think that's what
It's
that's
an
the plan. Is the plan?
Chaos
is the
on the
plan.
table because Peter, no kings is tomorrow. Tomorrow, all across this country, it is projected that millions, upwards of what are the numbers that the folks are saying? Upwards of 9 million, maybe even 12 million people will come out various spaces and places all over this country at these rallies to literally make their voices heard about the chaos that Kevin is talking about. We had the president of AFSCME on our show earlier today, and he said he represents the largest union of public sector workers, and a lot of them are upset about the chaos. They're concerned about their health care, things that maybe we're not talking about in the news as much right about now because of the war, but these are on, this is on the front line for people out there. So
I didn't actually, I don't drive a car, so I fully did not realize how much gas has increased since the beginning of, I'm going to put conflict in quotes because I believe in it. We're at war with Iran. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We are. I'm going to put conflict in quotes. How much gas has increased? I didn't know it used to be like $2 and now it's basically doubled. And I believe other areas are even worse than that.
is the chaos helping? I don't know. 12 million people in the No Kings is like, I don't know.
I'll believe it when I see it.
It's one thing for voters to say, look, we want you to go into Washington and break some China. It's another thing if you want to sit down to dinner and you don't have anything to eat on, right? You don't have any China to put your food on. And I think that the consequences of disruption are now at play here. And the question is whether Democrats can say it's all Trump's fault. You don't like what's happening here. He promised you this and he can't deliver. Trump is gambling on the idea that the Iraq war will be over sometime in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, and people will have forgotten about it by then. The gas prices will come back down, everything will settle down, that all of the Michigas right now will be over by then, and people will be more appreciative of his leadership. But the moment he hasn't offered them what they thought they were voting for, he promised three main things: stop immigration. He's succeeded in closing the border, let's say. Bring prices down. Obviously, they're going up. And no new wars. Obviously, we're in a big new war. So how is he going to play that in the fall?
And people can see the connection.
And also, one of the problems I have with the general voting public is, how do I say this? They do not realize how long ramifications will go on for politically speaking. Because, like, whatever the result is that happens with Iran, we're going to have to deal with the gas will not tomorrow go back to the price it was before the war started. So it's going to take a couple years. Maybe some people are saying at least 4 years. Some places are saying more. And so that's going to take some time to restore back to what the previous norm was. And people don't also realize that a lot of countries don't trust U.S. And that's going to take decades for that to get fixed, to the point that I don't know if other countries are going to trust U.S. again within my lifetime. And I'm like a 20-year-old.
Between the actions that he's taken and his failure to deliver on those priorities. Prices are going up because of the tariffs and now because of the war in Iran. That is not a difficult case for Democrats to make.
Well, the question is, what will people do at the ballot box? And we have to wait a couple months to see.
Wow, okay, that was a harsh cutoff. I didn't actually realize how harsh that cutoff was going to be. Huh. I'm curious. And there we go. So, like, it's I'm trying to see if I can. I'm going to add trackers to track the Senate version of the budget bill and then the House version of the budget bill. But I know that House didn't have any, basically called off early today after hitting the gavel. And so, like, I don't know what the play is, like, and I don't even know if the GOP's own House members agree with each other at this point. And then I especially don't know if they even if the GOP agrees on the Senate side of things. And I think, like, one of the things is people have to make sure they're politically engaged and they're voting for politicians who will basically help with this. Because, like, I'm surprised at some of the states that we have flipped and that stuff. So, like, I hope we get the Senate, but that might be my hopium. As I said, I hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I think we're going to get the House, knock on wood. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, and every single day we should pretend it's not. Like, well, not pretend. Fight every single day, no matter what, because the day that we don't fight as hard as we can is the day that the opposition can get that lead. And I don't think you should take anything for granted or have assumptions about what the voting indicators are going to be. No. So I'm going to do another ad again right now so I don't get interrupted by an ad. But I actually think I am back. Also, one of the reasons but yeah. Nope. So I know that Trump today at 9 p.m. EST is going to be talking about I'm going to put conflict and get in quotes in Iran right now. And I know that's happening at 9 p.m. EST. I know that some of our European allies of you. Hi, Lauren. How are you doing? So, like, I know that is all going on. I do also have a time zone converter that is helpful for people to watch. Oh, okay. I can't do that back to back. So that you I don't know if anyone from Australia is watching, but well, I don't know if that's I think this would show. Have fun picking good luck with picking up the kids. But thank you so much for stopping by and saying hi. But like so I know that and I know he likes. I will add a like counter and I will add that to my to-do list to have a light counter because I think that since a lot of people seem to like that a lot, so I will do that. Likes are important. Oh, nope. I'm a silly head. TikTok. Um, and so there we go. Yeah, I think I'll be live for one more hour, but I'm debating if I should actually start extending my live streams. So one of the things I'm debating is if I do like 3 hours of news content, and then I do a couple hours for an undetermined amount for playing games, or just more of a chill, relaxed stream, and also to just have something fun to do after like talking about politics, which is pseudo heavy in my mind. Mm. Okay, and we're going to see. I don't. Why is Trump speaking right now? I'm like just. I'm just looking at right now. Oh, he's making a statement about birthright citizenship. So that's going on there. What to do? Speak. Um. And like also it's oh that reminds me. So I heard that Pete Hegseth is basically having a religious pray time, which okay, fine. I don't You're allowed to pray. I don't know how I feel about it being organized, like making everyone do it if that's the way it is, or highly encouraging and the social repercussions if you do not do that. The other thing is one of the more concerning things is like fine, you have your religious leader speaking. One, ideally you would have other religious speakings and not just one form of faith. But the part I'm very concerned about is some of the people who are brought up as religious leaders were talking about how certain I'm gonna just be blunt, women should be lesser than men. One, I think that's so demeaning to the women who fight in our military and that stuff. Well, not that stuff, just demeaning in totality. Eh. Okay, there we go.
President Trump is set to address the nation tomorrow night with an update on the Iran war. His last primetime address to the country.
Also, tell me if the volume's too quiet, because like
NBC4's Tracy Leong is in the newsroom for us now with the latest. Tracy.
Yeah, Carolyn, President Trump told reporters earlier today he expects the U.S. to leave Iran in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
because it sounds quieter.
As the war in Iran is entering its second month, President Trump told NBC News, quote, "We're doing great and it's coming to an end." And while the White House says the war in Iran will be over soon, with oil field and tankers as the target of attacks, the price of oil and gas will keep going up. For the first time in 4 years, a gallon of gas is averaging more than $4 nationwide and around $6 here in California. A direct
Holy wow. I did not know gas, like, it makes sense, like, in theory, I know gas could get that expensive, but I didn't know it got, like, logically I knew, but I didn't know that was a reality that gas is that expensive in California. That, wow.
consequence of oil tankers stuck in the Strait of Hormuz.
We're $4, yeah, and we have a country that's not going to be throwing a nuclear weapon at us. And
Okay, okay, I don't like pausing people mid-statement, but I will have to do that for misinformation spread. There is no proof that Iran had nuclear weapons. There is no proof of that statement. And then also our CIA has been tracking that actively since 2003. And there has never been proof. And their religious leader, who is not dead, would have to look up how to say his name. Actually, was very anti-nuclear arms. And to the point that they might have had nuclear capabilities, but nuclear capabilities could just be also energy. And depending on, I don't know how what access to non-renewable resources Iran has. But I think every country should have enough power to support itself, ideally. So I'm not going to be upset with the country for that. And even if you do not agree with, if you do not trust the religious leader, like he might be lying, fair, fine. Our own CIA for decades at this point has said that's not a thing. And I don't, if you want to agree with the war, like if you want to agree with the U.S. going to war, or agree with the U.S. going to war for legitimate, like the real reasons, not the fake reasons that President Trump just said. Which are the three main reasons is one, the idea that China, I believe, gets 17% of their oil from Iran. And that would be a big impact, especially for a country of China's size. They have reserves, though, and I don't know how long those reserves are going to last. I don't know if anyone besides China's own government would know how much that's going to do. But, like, so they're not being impacted right now. The second reason, again, is the betting on the futures of oil and that stuff and giving people a heads up. And then the third thing, which is Israel wanting this, because Netanyahu, I'm going to have to learn how to, I'm sorry, I don't mean to butcher his name. The leader of Israel wanting to have this, basically get into war with them. So if you want for the last two reasons, okay, I disagree for those reasons, but at least where you understand those are the reasons that the U.S. is sending military forces to Iran.
6 months.
The European Union telling its members to get ready for a long disruption to energy markets. Until the war ends and the strait reopens, the price of oil is expected to surge, causing hardship in a number of American industries, including airlines. Today, the president also announced,
I didn't even think about, I knew the price of goods are going to go up because, like, truckers use a lot of oil and gas. That's why, for the first time ever, USPS is actually adding oil tax in quotes, basically increasing their prices by like I want to say up to 8%. I can double check that though, because of the current, or the at least the prediction of what's going to happen with oil and how it's going to impact the U.S.
He would be cracking down on crime in several cities, including Los Angeles, saying he would send federal agents for the World Cup this summer.
Los Angeles, we should call and probably will. I think they have to. Now, we're going to have to do something when it comes World Cup time, and we're going to have to force ourselves upon them, which we have the right to do, because we don't want to have any crime. We don't want to have any problems for the Olympics and the World Cup.
Today, President Trump signed an executive order outlining new rules for voting by mail. The order directs.
So I did. But you know, it's very, very interesting to see, like, and I'm very curious to see what, like, who the people bought the futures are for oil or not. But I don't think we see that until like 3 months, like 3 months after the stocks are paid for. So we have to wait and see what happens with that. And like, oh, also the other thing that I know that the current administration is saying is they did it for a new regime change, which, yes, there has been a regime change. The problem is when you do a regime change, you basically create a power vacuum in that whatever it is, even if it's not at a government level. This will happen with like mafias or gangs. I don't know if I'm going to use mafia and gangs like even at the level of none. But once you remove a major power, there's going to be a lot of fighting for the new power and that stuff. And that power vacuum, a lot of people can get hurt during that time for fighting that power vacuum. And the other part of that is that you have no guarantees about the new government that's coming into place if they're going to be what the US wants. Because from my understanding, since Jimmy Carter, there's been an active disagreement with the US's leadership in Iran. And we can have my own personal opinions, like I think the US has stepped into Iran's affairs way too much to the point we need to keep our hands off of them. But to the point of the new regime of Iran could be much worse than the one we've known for the last couple decades. And it is now an unknown element. We don't know how these people are going to react. And you also just got rid of their religious leader. And so you're going to make a group of people who might have treated that religious leader as their version of the Pope, and they're going to act more radical because you just took a beloved figure away from them. And you're going to make more people reactionary and more defensive, and you just might have made the whole one. And depending on how pinnacle or the people viewed Iran's leader, you just might have created a bunch of extremists. And I think that US needs to stop putting their finger on the scale and let what happens happen. Unless it's like giving, humanitarian aid, especially with the whole entire. Also, it's a distraction from what's happening to Israel and Palestine, which is a genocide. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It's a distraction from that. It's also like Israel still making laws, and like harsher sentences, and I'm. They're. I also the whole entire like Israel and Palestine thing and how the US's role into that. It's like way too complicated and upsetting to the point where can't say with how much words I dislike how US's role supporting Israel. I'm just gonna put it simply as that. But and also I do not I understand that this action might have done because of oil futures, one of the stronger ones. And I just is the current administration thinking about their future as in like what they're going to look like in their polls in the midterms and in the president election? Has that the long-term process for that? And both the Democrats and the GOP are both fighting over the same group of people, of the people who are sitting on couches, because that's 33% of the possible adults um who decided eligible adults who can vote, and like they might be smaller than that because like some states remove if you get arrested, get a felony arrest, you can't vote. But like, and I know that both parties are contending for those voters. I don't. I'm. And it doesn't. And I'm very curious to see. I'm just seeing if I miss anything. But like, because like there's just so much coming out now and that stuff. Ooh, there's a. Who's John Bolton? Ooh, okay. So that's curious. I'm actually curious about what this person's gonna say because it's the John Bolton, attorney and former United States ambassador to United Nations. Oh, and I clicked on the wrong thing. But I'm curious to see what he has predictions what Trump's going to say. So I'm just curious what he's going to.
National Security Advisor John Bolton. He was also the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations during the George W. Bush administration. Ambassador, good to see you. So the president can address the nation tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, given that just today he said the United States doesn't need to open the strait in order to end the war, doesn't need to make a deal with Iran to end the war, and that regime change has already happened.
Well, first off, like, why would you not want to open the strait? Like, the current conflict / war, whatever you want to call it. Close the Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the main passageways for oil tankers to I can't think of the word, to go into. Why would you not want that open unless you don't think that's even that option is no longer on the table and you're trying to lower people's standards of what they think is possible? Okay, hold on. Let me take a deep breath. Like that's me being way too cynical. I'm going to dial back. Okay. Is a good like maybe it could be a negotiation. I'm talking about that statement there. Negotiation tactic of that they don't want to make it think that Iran has the upper hand in negotiations. Maybe that's the idea of how the current administration could be looking at things.
What do you expect the president to announce tomorrow night?
I think he's going to announce that the victory has been achieved, the war is over, and Americans are coming out. I think he's not doing this on anything related to strategic concerns. He's worried about the price of gasoline at the pump in this country and the political ramifications. We have done a lot of damage to Iran. That's all to the good. It has destabilized the regime, even.
Okay.
Marco Rubio said that yesterday. The conditions are moving in the direction of possible regime change. Apparently, we're going to abandon that as an objective, if it ever was an objective. And I think it's going to leave Iran, unfortunately, although badly wounded, in a stronger position. They have shown they can close the Strait of Hormuz. They're cooperating with Russia much more closely than before. Russia's providing them intelligence.
Oh, well, okay, that Russia's intelligence makes sense. But it's very interesting because like Russia is having its own problems with the forces against like how Russia's having its own problems because of the progress that Ukraine has made in their war. So it's very interesting, like, to see, like, all the chess play it's like multiple chess games on each there's, like, multiple chess games going on at the same time, and some of the pieces will move from one board to another, and some of the chess pieces like, the queen moving from one board to another, and that sometimes some players don't have a queen. So, it's very interesting to see what's being played out.
To target American facilities and personnel. And I think the Chinese will be more than happy to invest in Iranian oil infrastructure if we walk away from this.
It's like the old Senator George Aiken statement on Vietnam when he suggested for the United States to get out of Vietnam, they should just declare victory and go home. Is that what you think the president is basically doing here, and how much of a victory would it be?
Well, I think he's been preparing for it for a long time. He said some weeks ago, it seems like a long time, but he said something like, I'll feel it in my bones when it's time to end the war. This is not strategy. Let's be very clear here. This is somebody who's not thinking in long-term American national interests. He's thinking day to day about his political circumstances. And I think the negative effect it will have with all of our allies, and not just in NATO, but our Pacific.
Because from my understanding, is we did not even tell some of our troops, we did not tell any of our allies that we were going to do that military move. And if I were one of our allies, I would not trust US right now when it comes to, at least for sure, war efforts, and military efforts. And you might extend that to other things as well right now.
Pacific allies, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, others who buy so much of their oil from the Gulf, and maybe most of all, the Gulf Arabs, who are now, apparently, as we walk away, to be left to deal with Iran on their own. Much smaller countries, now having seen what Iran can do to intimidate the United States, close the Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, and dominate traffic in oil. This is going to leave the Gulf Arabs in a terrible quandary.
Yeah, Richard Haas, the president emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations, called this a we broke it, you own it strategy. To what extent? I mean, the Europeans and the Asian allies, they don't want to own it. Go ahead.
Yeah, Winston Churchill had the word for this. He's scuttling. He's scuttling out of the area. And I think it's the damage done to American credibility, not to mention his credibility, but let's worry about America's credibility. For what we ever do on a long-term basis with anybody again, they're going to say, but what about Trump? I mean, the downside for the United States here, if he does this, is just incalculable.
And just before I let you go here, though, to be clear, you do believe that Iran, whatever regime is running the country, is severely weakened. What's their capacity to hurt the United States going forward?
Well, it depends on how long it takes them to resume oil sales and to rebuild. And that's what a wounded regime, it's not replaced, as he has said and as others have said. It's the same regime. It's the same ideology, just different faces. And they will rebuild their nuclear program, and they will rebuild their ballistic missile program, and they will rebuild their terrorist networks, and they do have the capacity to close the Strait of Hormuz. It's in a finite period of time. We've mowed the lawn. That's great, but the lawn's coming back.
Ambassador John Bolton, thank you for being with us tonight. With us now, retired Army Lieutenant General Karen Gibson. She's a former Director of Intelligence for U.S. Central Command. Also with us, CNN National Security Analyst Beth Sander and Alex Plitzis. Alice, you're right here with me, so let me just start with you. The President said, again, before he announced that he's giving this speech tomorrow night, we don't know if he's going to say, we're done. But before that tonight, he said the United States can be finished in the next 2 to 3 weeks. What do you think of that timeline?
So I think it makes sense if we're going to pursue the original objectives that the Pentagon and the White House laid out before we had mission creep with the Straits. So the Pentagon, the CENTCOM commander laid out that we'd taken about 13,000 targets. There's about 3,000 left, about 2 to 3 weeks left of bombing in order to accomplish that. And then the president started making some comments that leads me to believe that we could end up walking away, saying, to the allies, we need you to step up, we need you to take responsibility for it. And then today there was a comment that, hey, going after the nuke stuff might be a little bit dangerous. So I think he's leaving himself room to leave.
General, let me ask you, what options do you think the president is leaving himself here? Supporters of the president always like to say he's unpredictable. He'll say things like, oh, I'm moving troops in there, I'm going to bomb the oil facilities. On the other hand, I want to make a deal and we might leave without the strait being open there. But what options truly exist tonight?
That's a great question. So certainly we've started to see the movement of some elements of ground forces, principally amphibious marine forces, some rapid reaction army elements, as well as some elite special forces units. So there are a variety of things that they could be used for, but it would not be a wholesale invasion of the Republic of Iran. It might be seizing the Karg oil terminal and restricting Iran's ability to use those facilities to raise money. It might be for seizing some of the islands in the Straits of Hormuz, the littoral area. Those are excellent missions for the U.S. Marines. It's what they're designed to do. All of those missions would come with some element of risk, both politically and operationally. The troops would be subject, not just while they're conducting the seizure and seizing that terrain, but for the enduring time that they are occupying it, they would probably still be subject to strikes by the remaining missiles and drones that Iran's been using against extra elements. And that would require the application of other things like a combat air patrol from fighters or intelligence surveillance and reconnaissance, and really tying up a large number of forces for the duration of the time that they are there.
So, Beth, the president said today that regime change has been effected, that there is a new regime, he says. He says the United States is dealing with more rational people. And now he also says that a deal, though, is not necessary. It's irrelevant at this point. How much sense does that make after these 32 days?
Well, I mean, I think Ambassador Bolton pretty much wrapped up that idea of this is obviously not regime change, you know, when you just have different people who have the same ideology. But I think that this whole idea of, you know...
I mean, like, I think there's also, like, I don't like, this gets into the point of semantics. People will define regime change differently. I think the average person... Okay, nope, I can't. Nope, I'm gonna pump that back. My interpretation of regime change was actually just people changing. I did not think about ideology being a thing. But, like, that's a fair argument that certain ideologies will actually, if it's the same ideology as the previous group, is there actually a change of government? That is fair.
So where are we right now? Iran does get a vote here. And, you know, one of the things that we're seeing today with the kidnapping of an American journalist in Iraq, with IRGC threats against U.S. businesses in the Gulf. We've had a number of terrorist groups wrapped up in the region, and we've had cyber attacks in the United States. So,
oh, that's right.
You know,
didn't Iran just hack our director of FBI, I believe?
Iran can still conduct the asymmetric warfare that they were designed and built to fight. And we should expect them to do that, from the Strait to terrorism to cyber.
We are seeing it. It does seem tonight. And Alex, I know this is something that is close to home for you because U.S. journalist Shelley Kittleson has been kidnapped, apparently, in Baghdad. She's been working in Iraq, in Baghdad. You know, the suspected kidnappers are affiliates, basically, of Iran. I know you're friends with her and have been in contact, roughly, with people around the margins here. What do you know?
So it's unclear exactly who took her at this point. You know, it's clear the U.S. government did provide warnings that there was a potential for a kidnapping plot that could have been, you know, conducted by proxy forces by Iran, but it's unclear exactly who has her at this point. She's a journalist. She's been operating the region for a long time. Generally one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. The government's been incredibly...
I didn't, like, how to word this? I did not know that any journalist got kidnapped recently. I know that's always, sadly, on the that's sadly always a possibility. But yeah, I didn't even actually think about, like, some of the journalists who will stay on their ground to report the news on site.
You know, responsive to it. You know, she designated me as her emergency point of contact. I believe the family will be taking over shortly, so I don't speak for them or anybody else, but in the interim, the government's really doing a great job.
If it is a proxy, does it show that Iran is trying to maybe, you know, spread their tentacles?
Well, it's unclear because there could be two different scenarios. This could be in response to actions in Lebanon, or it could be in response to Iran. So it's really unclear, and until they, you know, formally identify who the kidnappers are, they make some demands. We're kind of left guessing at the moment.
Wishing them the best, obviously, here. General, I want to ask you about the president now saying that the Strait of Hormuz, the United States, whether it's open or not, it's not a U.S. problem. So if the United States does effectively end its role in this conflict, the strait's still closed, what happens? How?
I mean, wouldn't it, like, okay. I think that's a silly notion because, like, one, I don't actually know if the U.S. gets oil from there. Let's just say for the sake of argument, the U.S. gets no oil that's transported in the Strait of Hormuz for the sake of argument. Some of our allies 100% do. So we just basically slapped our allies in the face, being like, we created this problem, but we're letting you clean up the bag now. That's very highly concerning. What? I mean, like, one, that's just not a very good ally then. Like, and also, even if, like, if you're okay with the impact on allies, which I have opinions about, moving on, if any other countries are having an oil storage, that will increase the price of oil globally, which that would still impact US no matter what. So,
how would European nations or Asian allies work to open it?
Well, I would say first, technically, the straits are not closed, but there have been commercial entities that have made the decision that the risk is understandably too high, commercial entities and insurance providers, that the risk is too high to conduct business there. So the decision to reopen the straits is not really a military or a political decision. It is the decision of those commercial risk owners. And what they'll be looking for is a sustained cessation of hostilities, that Iran is no longer threatening not only the straits themselves. It's important. It's not just that narrow transit corridor, but it's their ability to affect any kind of shipping in the Gulf, as well as we've seen, targets on the other side in Bahrain, Qatar, the Emirates, etc. And so they'll be looking for decreased number of strikes, as well as diplomatic indications that lead them to believe that it's not a temporary peace, that it is something that is enduring enough for them to take on the risk that it entails.
And okay, so that I will have one more segment, but I want to do an ad first just to make sure I don't get interrupted. But thank you for everyone who does watch the ads. And there we go. Don't know why it's so there is an executive as Trump's executive order and NPR and PBS's rule are labeled unconstitutional, a judge says. And so let's see. I'm going to watch that later on. We're going to do. We're going to see where this says.
What started as a simple executive order has now exploded into a full constitutional crisis. And the stakes? They couldn't be higher for millions of Americans who rely on public broadcasting every single day.
Does this stop?
Just hours ago, a federal judge made a ruling that sent shockwaves through Washington.
That felt weird. Actually, we're just going to. Nope. We're going to do.
Trump's executive order on NPR and PBS is unconstitutional. Judge rules.
Okay, that was weird. I have an auto reader and that stuff. Because, like, sometimes my eyes just get tired from reading too much. On everywhere. And so It's basically unlawful. The president doesn't have the constitutional ability to do that. That's it. And also it comes to a part where, like, it is an overstep because it think it comes to a problem of censorship of the media, and I wonder if they can make that argument. And it's more of, I think everyone has the right to speak, like, even though I dislike Fox News has the right to exist. I think that anything that Fox News has to say should actually cite its sources, should have a counterbalance. So anytime Fox News says something, someone from the other side has to say something. And there's also a time where, but like, that's why I'm for like the fairness doctrine and that stuff, because that could, and I think that's one of the bigger things that helps contribute to the state of where we are in the media line. Mine. Uh, mm, we're gonna see if like oh, this one gonna be filming videos. Yeah, it's what I'm selling.
Well, President Trump is set to ask Congress, though, in the coming weeks to rescind federal funds for NPR and PBS. And how are these public broadcasters currently funded? And why is the president angry at them right now?
Right. I don't think a lot of people realize that the PBS, public broadcasting, NPR, National Public Radio, they do receive taxpayer funds each and every year, funds allocated from Congress to operate. Now, it's not their entire budget. They do have donors as well, so cutting of these funds is not expected to end NPR or end PBS, but if you're taking away millions and millions of dollars from any operating budget, there's obviously going to be an impact here. We shouldn't necessarily be surprised. President Trump has criticized PBS and NPR for its editorial coverage for years. There was a high-profile hearing on Capitol Hill just recently where Republicans teed off on those news organizations for their coverage, particularly of President Trump in recent years. This continues the philosophical belief of the Trump White House that a smaller government is a better government and that there needs to be less spending of taxpayer money on certain things. We're seeing that play out with cuts at the IRS and cuts at the Department of Health and Human Services and elsewhere, and we're certainly seeing it in areas and in programs that the president has been angered and frustrated at over the years, and yes, that includes coverage of PBS and NPR. We'll watch this story carefully. Congress will still need to sign off on any planned cuts by President Trump.
And so I was hoping, I'm currently looking for the case number because I assume Trump, well, this administration is going to appeal that decision. Stuff. So, let's see. And so it hasn't, looks like they haven't done anything. But the case number is, well, I'm looking at it, is one, forgot what, how should I call them? Collins 25-CV 01674. So it's more of, I think this is going to be interest. This also goes into the merit of, like, I think there needs to be more protections for the, even, like, there needs to be more protections for, like, newspapers and that stuff. Or, like, not, I don't know if protections is quite the word, but limitations about the president's power. And then the power of him choosing the FEC chair. And that stuff, I do not think the FEC chair of any political, well, for any president, should be used as a tool to censor opposition that you dislike. I understand if there's a great harm to the people for if they're listening to, like, a news show and it's actually encouraging people to do harm or facilitating that harm. But the when a government limits what people can say, especially when it comes to journalistic ability, that is, I think everyone on both sides of the aisle should be afraid of that as a political overreach. And, like, and I'm worried about the overreach happening. Like, I am not for the ID laws and that stuff. One, because, like, like, if you did that, you're just going to make all the major websites that the average person uses, and then you're saying you're doing this to protect kids. The kids are just going to find smaller websites who, since they're so small, like, in theory, yes, they should follow the law, but they're not being monitored that closely, so they might not have those protections for their kids, and they might have less protections than the mainstream news sources are. And so you just push the kids into a more unsafe platform. So you're not helping kids there at all. And also, what's determined not safe for kids is very complicated because, like, I I think all moments of history should be taught, including slavery, genocides, um, even the bad parts of the U.S. Like, every country has bad parts, but bad parts of U.S. That all needs to be, and then also talking about, like, queer history and talking about those. Depending on how the laws are written, that would prevent the history information being spread out about that, and for and that could be a very harmful for other individuals. That's not even going into, like, neurodivergency, like, since that's a medical health but since that's a medical condition, should a random person be talking to kids about autism? And I'm putting it vaguely and very aggressively in that way because that's how I think opposite when I think autism should be talked about. And I think if people knew autism from, like, a younger age, it would be not stigmatized. Well, not just autism, any neurodiversity talked about at a younger age, it'd be not stigmatized as much as it is. And there could be, I believe in the curbing effect of, like, if you help neurodiversity people who are minorities and help them, it will help all of other society because people who do not have neurodivergency or not part of those minority groups will benefit from the new systems in place and basically will help boost up all of society. Um, so, like, our, uh, and do I think that there should be, like, more community. I am going to give a praise to Twitter for one thing. I think the community notes were actually a very helpful thing. At the bottom of some of the videos, um, the, at bottom of some YouTube videos, they actually have, like, a warning talking about, like, how to get more information on this topic. I I think that's also helpful in that stuff. And I know this is going to actually not be helpful for the algorithms, but if there's anything, like, politically marked, then you make sure in the feed the other side politically is shown as well to stop people from going to rabbit holes because the both sides of the very extreme, both terrifying in different ways. And some of it could just get to the point of nihilistic. And nihilism is some people with nihilistic ideologies are, how do you say, might do a harm to society very, and I might have to think more succinctly about that. And also, I know that also goes into like one of the problems I think that also contributed in that stuff is because there wasn't enough history put into like different subjects or history matters. Um, like I've of course heard of Nazi Germany in 1930s. I just did not. I had a hard time, you know, seeing the full picture of it all because it seems so. What's the word? I could not conceive of it because it seems so inhumane. And so I went down my own I started doing research and learning everything that happened. Well, not everything because it's such a that has a lot happened. But I learned like the main points of it. I watched documentaries about it from multiple points of views, about the Allies' point of views, Russia's point of views, um, the Germans' point of views during that time. But there is a group of people who don't even think that moment happened in history. And I think that came from history not having its standards and showing those point of views, even though we have like internet, um, internet for like schools and that stuff. Like I was able to watch the videos they did during the trial, and the sheer amount of proof of that being faked is I cannot even imagine as a possibility. And also the so much the ramifications of that of like if it so, the ramifications of that moment across multiple countries, even the US, because the US got some of the scientists from that terrible regime in Germany at that time and helped create our space program during the Cold War. The I don't if that was I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole very quickly. Hello, how are you doing? But I think there has to be a more encouraging of education about like history and education and even like political matters. I don't think the average person knows how to be politically active today. And I think that's a very important. And I didn't like for me like discovering for like Congress. I didn't realize that Congress had multiple rule books. Well, okay. I Let me word that correctly. I didn't realize Congress had multiple rule books just for each chamber on each side. I thought there'd be like just one rule book for per chamber, and I was hoping for I would get be honest, to be succinct worked. Uh, but yeah, I think it's so. But how are you doing today? I and sorry, how are you doing today? G Giacomo Fun. Oh, I don't know if I pronounced your name or. Please tell me if I pronounced that correctly. But like, yeah. Uh, back to the. I'm just like looking at so it looks like some of the back to an earlier case because when I was talking about Citizens' argument with this SCOTUS, it seems like seem to be skeptical and that stuff. But yeah, there we go. And but yeah, so yeah, I think thank you for everyone who joined today. I hope everyone has an amazing weekend. I if you want to continue watching my content, I do have previous vlogs up and previous clips, so please watch that if you like my content. Please have a good day.